Picture this. You're scrolling through your music library, wondering why you haven't heard certain country legends on the radio lately. Well, here's a shocking truth. Many of these iconic voices were deliberately pushed out, banned, or blacklisted by the very industry they helped build. Today, we're diving deep into the untold stories of 21 country music superstars who faced the wrath of Nashville's establishment. Before we dive into the legends of the past, let's start with the most shocking modern example. In February 2021, Morgan Wallen experienced one of the swiftest and most dramatic falls from grace in country music history. Just imagine, one moment you're the biggest name in country music, and the next you're completely erased from radio and streaming platforms nationwide. Wallen was caught on camera using a racial slur outside his Nashville home, and the industry's response was immediate and devastating. His record label, Big Loud Records, suspended his contract indefinitely. Country radio stations across America pulled his music from rotation faster than you could blink. Streaming services removed him from prominent playlists. Major award shows like the Academy of Country Music Awards barred him from eligibility. CMT stopped playing his videos, and he was banned from the 2021 American Music Awards. What makes Wallen's story particularly compelling is how it demonstrated the power and speed of modern cancel culture in Nashville. Within hours, one of country music's biggest stars was essentially erased from the industry. However, fans fought back, hammering local stations with complaints about his absence and arguing that radio was giving in to political pressure. After months of silence, apology tours, and meetings with Black organizations, Wallen was quietly reinstated by many platforms by mid-2021. His comeback demonstrated both the industry's capacity for swift punishment and eventual forgiveness, but also highlighted ongoing tensions about accountability in country music. It's proof that even in the modern era, Nashville's power to silence artists remains as strong as ever. Let me start with something that might blow your mind. Casey Musgraves, one of the most decorated artists of our generation, has been practically ignored by country radio despite winning multiple Grammys and achieving worldwide fame. Her story perfectly captures how Nashville struggles when artists dare to challenge their narrow-minded norms. When Casey burst onto the scene in 2013 with her debut album, Same Trailer Different Park, she delivered hits like Merry Go Round and Follow Your Arrow. But here's where things got interesting. Follow Your Arrow featured lyrics that openly supported same-sex relationships and encouraged people to live authentically outside traditional boundaries, while younger, more diverse audiences absolutely loved it. And the song even won a CMA award for Song of the Year. Country radio stations flat out refused to play it. The situation got even more ridiculous with her 2018 masterpiece, Golden Hour, which won the Grammy for Album of the Year, a feat that's incredibly rare for country artists. Yet somehow, country radio still gave her the cold shoulder. Despite all these industry snubs, Casey has remained commercially successful, proving that authentic artistry will always find its audience, even when the gatekeepers try to silence you. Now here's a story that'll make your blood boil. Willie Nelson, the man who would become one of country music's most beloved icons, was basically kicked out of Nashville in the early 1960s. Can you imagine? Despite writing absolute classics like Crazy and Hello Walls, Willie couldn't catch a break as a performer because the industry was obsessed with something called the Nashville sound. You see, back then, the music industry wanted clean-cut images, smooth vocals, and polished production. Willie's unconventional voice, unique phrasing, and rugged appearance simply didn't fit their cookie-cutter mold. Record labels tried desperately to reshape him, but album after album flopped. The frustration of having zero creative control finally pushed Willie to make a life-changing decision in 1972. He left Nashville and headed back to Texas. But here's where the story gets beautiful. In Austin, Willie discovered a vibrant music scene filled with hippies, cowboys, and free spirits who welcomed his authenticity with open arms. This move gave birth to outlaw country, a revolutionary genre that completely rejected Nashville's formulas and embraced raw storytelling and artistic freedom. His 1975 album Red-Headed Stranger, which Nashville executives thought was too sparse for commercial success, became a massive hit and changed country music forever. Jerry Lee Lewis's story with the Grand Ole Opry is absolutely legendary, and not in a good way. Despite having deep country roots and releasing hits like She Even Woke Me Up to Say Goodbye and What Made Milwaukee Famous, Jerry Lee never felt accepted by Nashville's snooty establishment. On January 20th, 1973, he was invited to perform at the Opry, and they gave him two simple rules: no cursing and no rock songs. Well, Jerry Lee Lewis being Jerry Lee Lewis, he decided to break both rules spectacularly. Not only was he dropping F-bombs left and right, but he completely ignored commercial breaks and launched into a series of rock hits including Great Balls of Fire, Whole Lotta Shakin' Goin' On, and Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good. The real kicker? Most Opry artists were restricted to 2 or 3 songs, but Jerry Lee played for 40 straight minutes before finally closing with the more country-appropriate I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. The Opry banned him immediately after this notorious performance, though he did sneak back in during the early 1980s. It wasn't until 2022 that he was officially inducted. Talk about holding a grudge. Steve Earle's relationship with Nashville reads like a masterclass in artistic integrity versus commercial pressure. Despite being one of country music's most gifted songwriters, Earle has spent most of his career on the fringes of the establishment because he refused to play nice with their sanitized narratives. Despite his immense songwriting talent and massive influence on Americana and outlaw country, his music was rarely embraced by country radio or major awards institutions. But here's what's incredible about Steve Earle. He built a long-lasting, successful career purely through integrity and raw honesty, proving that sometimes the industry's rejection is actually a badge of honor. Jamie Johnson is widely considered one of the most authentic voices in modern country music, yet he remains completely sidelined by Nashville's mainstream industry. Despite Grammy nominations and multiple awards, Johnson has faced relentless resistance simply because he refuses to abandon traditional country sounds. Johnson's journey started promisingly when he signed with BNA Records and released The Dollar in 2006. The album showcased his incredible voice and songwriting ability, but because it didn't align with the pop-leaning direction country radio was heading, he got dropped faster than you can say Nashville. He bounced back independently with That Lonesome Song, which Mercury Nashville picked up. The album earned massive critical acclaim, with the single In Color becoming a fan favorite and earning Grammy nominations. In 2010, his double album The Guitar Song debuted at #1 on Billboard's country chart. Sounds like success, right? Wrong. Despite this achievement, country radio and his own label refused to support him. His commitment to artistic independence made him a terrible fit for an industry obsessed with polished, radio-friendly material. Frustrated beyond belief, he parted ways with Mercury Records in 2012. Many fans believe the industry's cold shoulder is the real reason behind his subsequent disappearance from the spotlight. Hank Williams III's story is perhaps the most heartbreaking on this entire list. As the grandson of the legendary Hank Williams I, you'd think Nashville would embrace him with open arms. Instead, he spent his entire career battling an industry that turned its back on the very legacy that built their foundation. Hank III's biggest fight has been trying to get his grandfather reinstated into the Grand Ole Opry after they expelled him in 1952. In 2003, he launched a passionate campaign arguing that the Opry owed much of its success to Hank Sr.'s contributions. Despite massive public support, the institution remained completely silent, which only fueled Hank III's rebellious spirit. Rather than conform to Nashville's expectations, he built his fan base through underground shows, independent releases, and fiercely authentic music. His 2006 albums like Straight to Hell were too wild for country traditionalists, but too twangy for rock radio, leaving him in a musical no man's land. He was systematically ignored and quietly pushed out of the country music scene, but his authentic approach has earned him a cult, following that Nashville's manufactured stars can only dream of. Even the legendary Johnny Cash wasn't immune to Nashville's harsh judgment. On July 19, 1956, Cash made his Grand Ole Opry debut performing classics like I Walk the Line and Get Rhythm. He later moved to California, signed with Columbia, and released massive hits including Ring of Fire. Despite relocating, Cash frequently returned to grace the Opry stage. But by the mid-1960s, his life had become increasingly chaotic due to substance abuse and the collapse of his first marriage. During a 1965 performance, an intoxicated Cash dragged his microphone stand around the stage, systematically smashing every footlight in front of the Opry stage. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Cash later reflected in an interview, "I don't know how bad they wanted me in the first place, but the night I broke all the lights on the stage with the microphone stand, they said they couldn't use me anymore. So I left and used that as an excuse to get wild and wound up in the hospital the third time I broke my nose." Fortunately, Cash's story has a beautiful redemption arc. His punishment lasted only 2 years before his wife, June Carter, whom he'd met at the Opry, intervened. Through her connections with the Carter family and work as a backup singer for Elvis Presley, they helped Cash return to the Opry stage in 1968. His membership was reinstated, and he remained a beloved member until his death in 2003, just 5 months after June passed away. Gretchen Wilson's rise and fall perfectly illustrates Nashville's discomfort with women who refuse to fit their narrow mold. She absolutely exploded onto the scene in 2004 with Redneck Woman, a defiant anthem celebrating working-class Southern women with grit, pride, and zero apologies. The song shot straight to #1 and earned her a Grammy for Best Female Country Vocal Performance. Following up with hits like Here for the Party, When I Think About Cheating, and Homewrecker, Wilson seemed unstoppable. But her raw, loud, and defiant style increasingly clashed with the polished, pop country aesthetic the industry began embracing in the mid-2000s. By the 2000s, radio stations had largely stopped playing her music, and label support completely dried up. Wilson's response was pure genius. She refused to compromise her identity and launched her own label, Redneck Records, continuing to release music independently. While the mainstream industry moved on without her, she maintained an incredibly loyal fan base. Her decline in radio support wasn't about talent. It was about an industry that couldn't handle women who wouldn't conform to their expectations. Tanya Tucker's story reads like a cautionary tale about what happens when female artists refuse to stay in their assigned lanes. She burst onto the country scene at just 13 years old with Delta Dawn in 1972. Immediately hailed as a prodigy with a voice far beyond her years. But as she matured, Tucker evolved into a bold, outspoken, and rebellious woman. Exactly what Nashville wasn't prepared to handle. Unlike her female peers who maintained the sweet, demure image expected of women in country music, Tucker sang with raw grit and confidence, wore provocative outfits, and lived her life unapologetically in the public eye. Her tumultuous romance with Glenn Campbell became tabloid gold, filled with public fights, substance issues, and their significant age difference, making her a constant target for media scrutiny and moral judgment from Nashville's conservative establishment. Despite her incredible talent and string of hits throughout the 70s and 80s, she was consistently overlooked for major awards and kept at arm's length by influential industry figures who preferred their female stars more manageable and less threatening to traditional values. Margo Price represents everything authentic about country music, which is exactly why mainstream Nashville has largely ignored her. She's one of the most respected singer-songwriters in modern Americana and country, yet remains completely shut out of country radio and Nashville's commercial machine. Price gained widespread attention with her devastating 2016 debut, Midwest Farmer's Daughter, released on Jack White's Third Man Records. The album was brutally honest about personal tragedies, the loss of her infant son, financial struggles, battles with addiction, and even jail time. It was gritty, raw, and deeply autobiographical in ways that made listeners uncomfortable, earning critical acclaim but virtually zero country radio play. The industry's rejection wasn't just about her music. Price has been vocal about social and political issues, criticizing sexism in the music industry, advocating for reproductive rights, and challenging corporate control in country music. Her 2020 album, That's How Rumors Get Started, further showcased her range, but again received minimal radio support. Price has been brutally honest about Nashville's gatekeeping, once tweeting, "Country radio wouldn't even play Dolly Parton today," perfectly capturing the industry's impossibly narrow definition of acceptable content. Despite being sidelined, she continues touring, recording, and building a dedicated fan base that values authenticity over industry approval. Sturgill Simpson's treatment by mainstream Nashville is criminal. Despite being one of the most critically acclaimed artists in modern country music, he's been repeatedly ignored and marginalized because he dared to push boundaries and speak truth to power. Simpson exploded into the spotlight in 2014 with meta-modern sounds in country music, a mind-blowing psychedelic roots-infused record that blended traditional country with experimental sounds and profound philosophical lyrics. Critics universally hailed him as a visionary, and the album appeared on countless Best of the Year lists. Country radio's response? Complete silence. His innovative sound simply didn't fit the polished, pop-heavy blueprint dominating Nashville's airwaves. Rather than compromise his artistic vision, Simpson doubled down on his authenticity. He openly criticized the industry, calling out the CMA Awards for excluding Merle Haggard from their tribute segment and accusing the establishment of completely forgetting country music's roots. He spoke candidly about the corporate politics controlling country radio and rejected the entire commercial system that sidelines genuine artistry. These controversies eventually led Simpson to distance himself from the country music label entirely. He remains a powerful symbol of independence, refusing to conform to Nashville's image-driven priorities while creating music that will be remembered long after today's manufactured hits are forgotten. Skeeter Davis's story proves that even the most beloved Opry members weren't safe from Nashville's political sensitivities. This Kentucky native first broke through as part of the Davis Sisters in the late 1940s, releasing the massive hit I Forgot More Than You'll Ever Know, which spent 8 weeks at number 1 in 1953. After her singing partner Betty Jack Davis tragically died in a car accident that also left Skeeter with severe head injuries, she briefly retired to start a family. But music called her back, and she returned as a solo artist in 1958, becoming an Opry member in 1959. The controversy that led to her suspension happened on December 8, 1973. Just days earlier, Davis had witnessed the arrest of members from a Christian organization called Christ is the Answer Crusade at a local shopping center. Before performing Amazing Grace at the Opry, she told the audience, "This is really something I should share. I didn't ask our manager, but they've arrested 15 people just for telling people that Jesus loves them, and that really burdened my heart." Nashville's establishment was not amused. Davis's membership was immediately suspended, and she was banned from performing at the Opry. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and the Opry welcomed her back in 1974. She continued performing there until 2002, remaining a member until her death in 2004 at age 72. Farron Young's descent from country music icon to industry pariah is one of the most tragic stories in Nashville history. Known for classics like Hello Walls and Live Fast, Love Hard, Die Young, Young was initially celebrated as a major talent. But his volatile personality, public outbursts, and personal demons eventually led to him being quietly pushed to the industry's fringes. Despite his musical legacy, Young became more famous for offensive remarks, inappropriate behavior at award shows, and alcohol-fueled public incidents than for his considerable artistic contributions. As he aged, the industry's tolerance for these behaviors evaporated as Nashville tried to project a cleaner, more marketable image. The consequences were devastating. Radio stations stopped playing his music, major events stopped inviting him, and the Grand Ole Opry rarely called on him to perform. He viewed this systematic rejection as betrayal by the very industry he'd helped build. Tragically, in December 1996, Farron Young took his own life at age 64, unable to cope with what he saw as his complete abandonment by country music. Neko Case's banishment from the Grand Ole Opry might be the most bizarre story on this entire list. While primarily known for rock music, Case's work showed enough country, folk, and Americana influences that the Opry invited her to perform at their Plaza Party outdoor concert in July 2001. Here's where things went horribly wrong. Tennessee in July is brutally hot under normal circumstances, but the outdoor stage was painted black and positioned next to a barbecue pit, creating absolutely hellish conditions. During her mid-performance, Case began feeling dizzy and woozy from the oppressive heat. She desperately asked for water or a chance to take a short break to cool down, but her requests were completely ignored by the Opry staff. Growing increasingly dizzy and genuinely fearing heat stroke, a desperate Case made a split-second decision. She removed her top in an attempt to cool down and avoid collapsing on stage. This violated the Opry's strict decorum policies, and despite the circumstances being completely beyond her control, she was never invited back. It's a perfect example of how rigid and unforgiving Nashville's institutions can be, even when an artist's actions are clearly motivated by a medical emergency rather than any intent to be provocative. Dierks Bentley's path to Opry membership included an unusual detour through being officially banned from the venue before he was even famous. While working as a researcher at the Nashville network, located on Opryland grounds, Bentley discovered he could sneak backstage and mingle with performers on weekends. When Opry general manager Pete Fisher caught Bentley lurking around backstage one too many times, they officially limited his access to the venue. Talk about awkward. But Bentley's love for the Opry and country music was genuine, and one of those backstage encounters actually inspired his first #1 hit. Bentley released his self-titled debut in 2003 featuring What Was I Thinking?, a song directly inspired by a girl he met backstage at the Opry during his trespassing days. He made his official Opry debut that same year, introduced by Ricky Skaggs, and followed up with the successful Modern Day Drifter album. On October 1st, 2005, Bentley was inducted into the Opry, becoming the third youngest member after Josh Turner and Carrie Underwood. During his performances, he keeps his dressing room door wide open so fans can visit, and he makes a point of watching other performers from the audience. "I don't ever want to lose that feeling of being a fan," he said, proving his authentic love for country music and the Opry's traditions. Kris Kristofferson's early career perfectly illustrates Nashville's suspicion of artists who didn't fit their narrow definition of country enough. His unconventional songwriting style was poetic, gritty, and emotionally raw, dealing with loneliness, existential despair, and human vulnerability in ways that made industry insiders uncomfortable. Many Nashville power brokers felt Kristofferson's music was too intellectual or sophisticated for country audiences. His background as a Rhodes Scholar and former Army helicopter pilot made him an outsider in an industry that prized authenticity over education. For years, he was largely ignored by the establishment despite his obvious songwriting talent. The breakthrough came through one of music history's boldest moves. Kristofferson borrowed a helicopter and landed it directly in Johnny Cash's yard to deliver a demo tape. Cash was immediately impressed and recorded Sunday Morning Coming Down, which became a #1 hit and forced Nashville to take notice. Soon his songs were being covered by Janis Joplin, Ray Price, and Elvis Presley, making it impossible for Nashville to continue ignoring him. He later joined the Highwaymen supergroup with Cash, Willie Nelson, and Waylon Jennings, cementing his status as a country music legend despite the industry's initial rejection. Don Gibson's story represents the subtle ways Nashville can push out artists without officially banning them. Known for classics like Oh Lonesome Me and I Can't Stop Loving You, Gibson wasn't officially blacklisted, but experienced industry pushback and marginalization that effectively amounted to professional exile. Gibson struggled with depression, anxiety, and substance abuse during his peak years in the 1950s and 60s. These personal battles led to erratic behavior, missed appearances, and long gaps between recordings, frustrating producers and executives who found him increasingly difficult to work with and market effectively. By the 1970s, his chart success had declined as younger artists dominated radio airwaves. Though he continued recording, Gibson was no longer a priority for Nashville labels and received minimal promotional support. This systematic marginalization felt like being unofficially banned, even though no formal action was ever taken against him. Fortunately, Gibson was eventually welcomed back to the Opry in the 1970s and 80s, where he was warmly celebrated for his significant contributions to country music. His experience shows how the industry can sideline artists through neglect and lack of support, rather than dramatic public confrontations. Kitty Wells, known as the Queen of Country Music, wasn't officially banned from Nashville or removed from the Grand Ole Opry, but she faced serious institutional resistance that nearly derailed her career before it began. Her story illustrates the systematic barriers female artists faced in country music's male-dominated landscape. Before her breakthrough, Wells struggled to be taken seriously in an industry where women were expected to sing backup or perform submissive love songs. Record labels believed female solo artists wouldn't sell records, and radio stations rarely played female-led tracks except as novelties or duets. Everything changed in 1952 when Wells recorded It Wasn't God Who Made Honky Tonk Angels, a direct response to Hank Thompson's The Wild Side of Life, which blamed women for men's infidelity and bad behavior. Wells's song challenged these double standards and became a massive hit, the first #1 country song by a solo female artist. However, her breakthrough came with significant pushback. NBC Radio and several major stations banned the song for being too suggestive and controversial. The Grand Ole Opry and NBC Radio Network initially refused to play it, calling it too risky and morally questionable. While Wells herself wasn't banned, her music faced censorship and gatekeeping from Nashville's biggest platforms, showing how the industry could silence artists without direct confrontation. Waylon Jennings was never officially banned from Nashville, but he was effectively shunned, resisted, and marginalized for years because he refused to surrender his artistic integrity to the industry's controlling interest. His story perfectly captures the battle between authentic artistry and commercial conformity. In the 1960s and early 70s, Nashville operated under a tightly controlled system where producers and label executives made every creative decision. Artists had zero creative control and were told what to sing, how to dress, and how to behave in public. The result was the slick, polished Nashville sound, designed to appeal to mainstream pop audiences rather than country music's traditional base. Waylon Jennings absolutely hated this system. When he signed with RCA Victor under producer Chet Atkins in the mid-1960s, Nashville executives told him to cut his hair, wear rhinestone suits, and tone down his rebellious style. This made him feel completely caged and creatively stifled. Jennings demanded something completely unheard of in Nashville at the time: complete creative control over his music. In the early 1970s, he started recording songs that were raw, rebellious, and unlike anything else on country radio. As expected, Nashville's elite refused to embrace his style, and radio programmers initially resisted playing his music because it didn't fit their polished formula. Executives viewed him as a stubborn troublemaker and temporarily froze him out of the country music industry. Our #1 spot goes to the man who essentially created modern country music, yet was cast out by the very institution he helped build. Hank Williams Sr.'s story is both triumphant and heartbreaking, illustrating how personal demons can destroy even the most talented artists. Williams made his Grand Ole Opry debut in 1949 and became a member after releasing an incredible string of hits throughout the 1940s. Hey, Good Lookin', I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, I Saw the Light, Move It On Over, and Your Cheatin' Heart. During his debut performance, he received 6 encores and went on to tour with his band, the Drifting Cowboys. But Williams's drinking problem, which had already cost him his job at a radio station, where he repeatedly showed up intoxicated, began seriously affecting his Opry obligations. His alcoholism became increasingly noticeable and problematic over the years following his membership. In 1952, just 3 years after joining, the Opry dismissed Williams after he missed several scheduled shows without explanation. He passed away just months later on New Year's Day 1953 at only 29 years old, making his dismissal even more tragic in retrospect. The most heartbreaking part? In 2003, his grandson Hank Williams III launched a campaign to have his grandfather posthumously reinstated into the Grand Ole Opry. The institution declined, stating that Opry membership is only active while members are alive and cannot be restored after death. It's a cold, bureaucratic response to one of country music's greatest tragedies. Despite all the marginalization, banning, rejection, and rebellion these music legends faced, country music continues thriving and evolving. These artists' stories remind us that authentic artistry often comes at a price, but true talent and integrity will always find a way to connect with audiences, regardless of industry gatekeeping. Which of these country music legends' stories resonated most with you? How can you connect their struggles to challenges in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed diving deep into these incredible stories, smash that like button, share this video with fellow music lovers, and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from music history. Before you go, check out our other video where we talk about shocking, tragic deaths in country music.